Alright, you've read the title, so you know what the video is about. Let's get into it. Lair has 4 bomb sites: Master R6 Room, Lab and Support, Bunks and Briefing, and Armory/Weapons. Master and Bunks are by far the best sites for ranked. Lab is okay, and Armory is awful. Possibly the worst site ever implemented into the game. Since Master R6 Room is currently the most popular site in ranked, we'll start here. In general, you'll want a few key elements in your op lineup. You'll want a shotgun, critical for making rotates and lines of sight. You'll also want some form of wall denial. It's not inherently critical if you're playing a bad team, but it is extremely helpful. Another element that's extremely helpful is a shield, maybe even 2. It will also be somewhat helpful to bring an ACOG and some type of intel. Next, I want to go over reinforcements. You'll want to reinforce these 2 master walls as well as these 2 R6 walls, the right server to display wall, and right server to R6 wall. The other 4 can be played around with depending on how aggressive you want to be, but I'll recommend the safest option, which is to reinforce all 4 walls in this corner in mezzanine. The only issue to reinforcing these 2 walls is if the enemy just ignores operational and tries to walk in through a breach, the players in mezzanine can't help out as effectively as they could if this wall was soft or opened. But the attackers should absolutely not be able to do that because of the sheer amount of angles they would be exposed to if they did try to just walk in breach without clearing anything else. Now the reinforcements are taken care of, let's talk about how to actually set up site. You'll need to open up head holes in these 2 server walls. You'll also want to rotate in this wall, as well as one in the display wall. You can also make holes in this lonely wall in master, but those aren't super necessary and don't help or hurt much either way. Lastly, positioning. This site is a fortress if you can play these positions correctly and play off of one another effectively. The first is in server itself. This is a power position because from here you can contest nearly every door into site as well as help nearly any of your teammates. Second is mezzanine. Whether you're fighting aggressive close to the operational double door or more passively and further back, this area can completely shut down any push from this side of the map. Third, we have in this corner in the R6 room. I'm going to call it cork because of all the cork boards. From here you can play exceptionally well off of your teammate's contact if the enemy is pushing this side of the map, but it's important for this player to be relatively passive and play more for refrags/crosses rather than straight gunfights. Fourth is in Master itself. This site can be entirely held from outside Master, but it adds another angle the enemy would have to fight if they do try and push into the site. And this player can fall back to the Master double door to help hold R6 room by playing with their teammate in server and cork. Fifth is main stairs. This is purely to make sure the other players don't get crouch walked up on. They can also help contest a bathroom push if that wall is soft, or rotate below if they have a C4. This is a sample setup you can copy verbatim or play around with if you'd like. Rounds in Siege generally have 3 phases. I've split the positioning for where players should be for the first 2 phases as it does change as the round progresses. I've also adjusted positioning if the player pushes operational or server side. 90% of current attacks push operational side, which, spoiler alert, is a horrid way to push. If the enemy pushes operational side based off of positioning alone, this setup should completely shut that down. Now a note for solo and duo queuers: play either in server or in cork. Your teammates will surely play mezzanine, and assuming they don't get slammed, it'll be more important to make sure nobody is able to crouch walk into the back of site or walk through the breach and annihilate everyone. If you're looking for an op based on my recommended lineup, run either Echo or Melusi. Echo has a shield, ACOG, and intel, but Melusi's utility is super strong and she has 4 of them. Honestly, if you want to win and you're solo queuing, you should just run Mel every game. Moving on to the next most popular bomb site, labs and support. As I mentioned before, this site is subpar. It's too big, has a bunch of clutter, too many entrances into site, and is way too destructible from above. But even still, there are ways to defend it, but you'll want to bring a few key elements. First, as with every site, bring a shotgun. Bring wall denial and Cade if he's up. It also would be a good idea to bring a bulletproof, some C4s, and a shield. As for the reinforcements, you only really need 8 of the 10. 2 will go onto the warehouse outside wall, the 1 on the missile wall, 2 for each hatch, and 2 for the lab exit to filtration walls, and the last one for one of the lockers to electrical wall, right side if you're in lockers. The setup itself isn't super complicated. First, you want to make a rotate between sites, as well as a rotate into lockers. Other than that, you'll want to make feed holes in the left lockers to electrical wall. You should also add head holes in the toxin wall, which can open up a few helpful angles into lockers, as well as a long angle all the way to the filtration door from missile. Positioning here is more important than the last site, but with less effective results. Sight really isn't good. First is in lockers. Most attacks are warehouse focused, meaning this puts you in direct confrontation with anyone pushing this way. It helps to have a shield to play this spot, as well as some ADSs / my frisbees. Second, in missile. This is one of the few places in all of sight that is completely safe from above, but it doesn't have any great way of directly stopping the attackers from dropping hatches into sight or pushing backside. Third is in stockroom. This can have more impact on contesting a backside push, but it can be seen from above if this player crosses the doorway into sight at the wrong time. I'd recommend running a shotgun here with a secondary SMG, i.e. Smoke, Mute, Warden, or even Solace. Fourth and fifth are meant to float between sites. You have exit to take cover in if the enemy is doing vert, but it's easy to get trapped in here. You also have filtration to take control of, but you have to be careful of the outside window and the staircase. This is another sample setup. Same as last time, I've created positioning placements for phase 1 and phase 2, as well as for if the enemy is pushing above or pushing warehouse. As teams get a better understanding of this map, they'll realize pushing above is the way to go. In order to counter that effectively, you'll ultimately need a roam setup, but since this video is primarily to get people introduced to this map and prepare them for playing it in ranked, whether they're solo, duo, or 5-stacked, a proper roam setup for defending this site is a topic for another video. Speaking of which, a note for solo and duo queuers, you want to play in lockers and missile. If the enemy pushes warehouse, they'll have to get through you to get into sight, and if the enemy pushes above, you can push out into warehouse and possibly go for a flank up yellow. Bunks and briefing is, in my opinion, the best site for ranked. For as few teams that there are who know how to actually attack this map, even fewer will know what to do when you go bunks/briefing. The key to winning the site is to play above. It's very small with minimal cover and the entire site can be seen from vert. You can honestly play this site entirely from the top floor, but that's probably a strat for another video as well. First, let's go over the necessary elements. Bring a shotgun, maybe 2, probably 2. Bring wall denial and maybe even Cade tub. You also want an intel op, some shotguns, a set of impacts, and maybe throw an ACOG in there for good measure. You'll reinforce 5 walls on site and 5 walls upstairs. First, reinforce the 2 bunks walls and the 2 briefing walls. Next, reinforce the single briefing to server wall, right side if you're in briefing. Now, for upstairs, you'll want to reinforce the 2 master to outside walls, the 2 R6 walls, and the 1 server to display wall. Same one we did when we defended top floor. To get the site set up, first you want to make a rotate between sites. An impact would be great for this. You also want to make some head holes in the CCTV wall. For upstairs, you'll set things up similarly to how they were set up when we defended master. Open the server wall, make a rotate between server and display, as well as one for server to R6, and then add head holes next to that rotate. Now there's a lot of vert that needs to be made. Luckily, it's pretty easy to remember where to make it. First, open both hatches. Next, you'll go to cork and make vert there towards either wall. Then you can go to the master double door and make vert towards that wall, and then away from that wall. And that's pretty much all the vert you should need. It covers every entrance into sight, including if the walls get open. Now you just have to hold up top. As for player positioning, first, someone needs to be in server. Still a power position, but in this case, it's more that it's one part of the triangle hold up here. Second is another part of the triangle. This player should be in cork, where he can swing off the contact of the first and third player. This is also where the pivotal vert is. Third is in master, also where the pivotal vert is, and the final point of our triangle hold. This player can tether off of their teammates in server and R6. The only way the enemy should be able to isolate fights here is if they're pushing 3 different places at the same time, and if that's the case, the players below should be able to chime in and help out as well. The 4th and 5th player will be on site. The 4th can be playing by the lockers and bunks, while the 5th can be playing by the rotate. Here is my sample setup. Cade and Tub as a combo on this map is incredibly strong as long as you can trick effectively. Although you don't need perfect communication to win with this type of setup, it can make it nearly unbeatable. Just be careful of people crouch walking around the map. When someone doesn't know how to attack a site, that's generally their default move, which is why I think Lesion is super helpful for this site. If you're solo queuing or duo queuing, you want to play Lesion. His secondary shotgun is great for making vert, plus his gadget can help you be aware of how you're being pushed. You'll then want to play in server, but if nobody else is playing upstairs with you, you'll most likely have to do a lot of running around. As for the last site on the map, we go to Armory Weapons. This site genuinely may be one of the worst sites ever brought into a competitive map. It has virtually zero cover on site. A large portion of it is destructible from above, but defenders can't play above because that room also has zero cover, plus a window and door that leads directly to outside. One of the sites is completely safe from below, not to mention this hatch that can drop the enemy into the safest plant spot on the map. But with all that said, this video wouldn't be complete without at least some recommendations for defending the site, so here we go. In ranked, Castle is going to be critical. With his 4 barricades, you can cut the entire map in half, making it so you don't have to worry about getting crouch walked up on. A shotgun is also critical. Intel and ACOGs are both super helpful, along with an Azami. Impacts and wall denial are also somewhat helpful. As for reinforcements, you need to reinforce the site walls, that is the 2 armory to hallway walls, and the 2 weapons to range walls. Next, reinforce the weapons hatch, and reinforce the 2 master to outside walls. Reinforce the master to server single wall, 1 master to mez wall, and 1 mez to operational wall. Now to talk about how to set up site. You'll first want to make a rotate into medical, and make head holes in the entire wall between sites. Next, you want to make head holes in the master to mez wall, and mez to operational wall. Lastly, you should probably make vert over the medical door. This is likely the only spot where you can actually use vert to help contest below, as everything else that could even potentially be used to fight the attack is in operational, and I don't think I really need to go over why playing vert in that room is a bad idea. Player positioning is a little spread out. First is smack dab in the middle of site. I wouldn't exactly call what's your cover, but it's the best you're going to get and can be made strong with an Azami. If you're playing here, you have to be the one swinging and swing your heart out. The second player should be in medical. From here, he can help if the enemy is pushing armory side, as well as help contest if the enemy is pushing reception, assuming his door is castled. Third would be by the weapons to reception door. This player can swing off of the contact from the players in the other site and create a sense of pressure on anyone pushing range/weapons, making them feel like they can't just walk in. Also, if the enemy is pushing above, this player can help out his teammates up there by holding a door or throwing a C4. Fourth and fifth players should both be above, one in master while the other is in mezzanine. They need to be poking and prodding people pushing top floor, but focus on staying alive. The person in master will be stuck though, so should at bare minimum go 1 for 1 or be immediately traded by the player in mezzanine. This player should also be trying to get support from their teammates below, depending on how many people are actually pushing above. The key for playing upstairs is to stay alive and act as a nuisance. The problem with this site is that much of it is destructible from above, which is the same for medical and weapons door. So if upstairs is completely lost and the enemy knows what they're doing, you will likely lose the round. But given that most people don't know how to actually attack this site, even in Pro League, you should probably not have to worry too much about that. Here is my sample setup. I didn't include position changes for the different phases of the round, or for if the enemy pushes from an opposite way. The macro positioning won't change too much, and honestly, this site is so rarely attacked that any attack to this bomb site in ranked will likely be crouch walking around the map, hoping for picks, and culminating into a final scramble into site. If you're solo or duo queuing and your team is trolling you by going to this site, your best bet is to run either a zombie and sit in site, or castle and play between medical and reception. Don't be afraid to take fights, but be careful not to get crouch walked up on. It's definitely an awful site, but again, no one knows how to attack it, so you might get away with it if you go here. And that's all there is to it. Lair is genuinely a fun map once you learn how to play it, and aren't you getting tired of playing Oregon 6 times in a night? Because I know I am. Share this with your stack, with your team, with the guy you just met on the street, and let's get everybody comfortable playing Lair. If you want screenshots of my setups, or a more detailed way of playing them, then there will be a link in the description.